Short recap. We're dealing with mass hysteria about an alleged killer virus that was never isolated by scientists and thus never proven to exist. Period. Yet, brought to you and lied to you by bribed scientists who sold their soul to make you believe that you and your loved ones are in mortal danger. Face masks and hand sanitizers, made obligatory by corrupt governments, have turned out to be toxic and carcinogenic. Not enough oxygen, too much carbon dioxide, skin diseases, lung diseases, retarded development in infants. We were warned by all the unbribed professionals. But the people didn't hear it, due to the everlasting fear-mongering repetition of the mainstream media. The notorious nose swab was introduced. Not an ordinary cotton swab, but a genuine professional nylon fiber swab that have been sterilized with ethylene oxide, which is toxic and carcinogenic, that contain morgellons, the same nanoparticles we found in face masks, that leave sharp fibers behind deep inside your nasal cavity, that contain the notorious DARPA hydrogel, that contain nanobots called theragrippers, that in all probability contain the vaccine, that may damage either your facial nerve or your olfactory nerve, or both. And if your blood-brain barrier is damaged in the process, a tissue that protects your brain against anything that is not supposed to enter it, you are officially buggered. Your limbic system will bear the detrimental consequences, which may shorten your life expectancy considerably. That's a lot to take in, isn't it? We fully understand if you don't believe us at this point, but let's take a closer look at the evidence, shall we? Number 1. Nose swabs are sterilized with ethylene oxide, a toxic carcinogenic gas. Now, according to the officials who are pushing the nose swabs down our noses, it's completely safe and nothing to worry about. Well, they're lying. Again. Nose swabs contain 50 times the maximum allowed amount of ethylene oxide. 50 times! Why? Is that really necessary for something that children now have to sniff each and every day before being allowed to go to school in some countries? Number 2. Nose swabs contain morgellons. Remember them from part 20? Those nanobot creepy crawlies in face masks that people inhale all day long? Well, I guess it wasn't enough to add them to just the masks, for they are in your nose swabs as well. Easy to test for yourself. They become active at body temperature, so hold the nose swab over a bowl of hot water and just wait. Use a magnifying glass or a microscope to see the filthy little critters that you push up your nose every time you do a nose swab. If you're lucky, they'll remain in your nasal cavity. If not, they will enter your brain. More about which in a bit. Number 3. Nose swabs leave sharp fibers behind. Once again, ever so easy to test for yourself. Here's a nose swab, and here's a piece of meat, representing the inside of your head. Roll the swab according to protocol across the meat, and voila! You can see some of the sharp fibers break off. They are left behind inside your head. Now, maybe you're not alarmed by this, but most of the medical doctors who saw this are. The fibers in these swabs were designed to break off. They're hollow, you see. That's why no ordinary cotton swabs were ever used. The hollow fibers contain something called DARPA hydrogel. Number 4. DARPA hydrogel is in the hollow fibers of the nose swab. Why is this worrying? Well, first of all, nothing benign has ever come out of DARPA, nor the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that in this particular case worked together with biotech company Profusa. Profusa makes tissue-integrating biosensors for continuous monitoring of body chemistries. We're talking tiny biosensors made of a porous smart gel. Biosensors that communicate your medical information via fluorescent light signals to an optical reader, which subsequently can be read using an app on your smartphone. Your medical data can and will be shared with healthcare providers and public health analysts. Securely, of course. What a marvelous piece of technology! We absolutely love and support scientific progress. We really do. I mean, you can use this to monitor diseases such as diabetes or chronic lung diseases. But can somebody please explain to us why this is in your nose swab? And why we were not told about this? Number 5. Nose swabs contain nanobots called TheraGrippers, invented by Johns Hopkins researchers in 2020. This is what a TheraGripper looks like. A star-shaped microdevice made from metal. It's a shapeshifter, meaning it changes shape from this to this, as soon as it reaches body temperature. The 6 sharp microtips then latch onto your intestinal mucosa like the teeth of a hookworm that actually stood model for this invention, and any medicine or vaccine encapsulated at the center will be released gradually into your body over a period of 24 hours. TheraGrippers are no bigger than a dust speck. They can be administered to you thousands at a time. Here they are next to a hypodermic needle. And this is what they look like on a cotton swab. Interesting choice of photo on their website, don't you think? For decades, farmers have been using nose swabs to vaccinate their cattle. It's fairly common and not state-of-the-art at all. The nose swab is dipped into the vaccine and up it goes into the nose. Number 6. Nose swabs may damage your facial nerve or your olfactory nerve, or both. There's only a very small angle that is safe to perform a nose swab. If the healthcare worker or you, when you do the test yourself, miss that safe angle, you run the risk of having some very important cranial nerves damaged. Nerves that enable you to smell and taste. Nerves that keep your facial expressions the way you want them to be. Nerves that protect your brain against foreign invaders, such as bacteria and viruses. Number 7. When a nose swab is performed incorrectly, your blood-brain barrier may be punctured. If this is the case, all kinds of pathogens may enter your brain and leave a trail of destruction. If your limbic system is damaged as a result, you will get symptoms like chronic fatigue, disturbed sleeping patterns, disturbed alertness, altered emotions, memory problems, loss of control of movements and of body temperature. Combined with the result of damaged facial and olfactory nerves with symptoms such as the loss of smell and the loss of taste, COVID-19 will be named as the culprit of all your symptoms. The symptoms you got right after having a nose swab. Any correlation will be dismissed by doctors and by fact-checkers. It was all just a coincidence. It will take some time before all the nasal swabs gone horribly wrong will come to the surface. As we speak, more and more people are stepping forward with their horrid stories about broken off swabs that remained inside the nasal cavity. Or that were found stuck in a lung. About the most horrendous headaches ever since the swab. About people with cerebrospinal fluid leaks, brain bleeds, about children with nosebleeds and eye bleeds. Thousands of medical doctors have stepped forward, calling out to stop this insanity. If a virus is so contagious, do you really think it can only be found hidden deep inside your head? If there's only a narrow, safe angle, must we really expose our children to this dangerous belief based on nothing but fear? Do you really believe that these were done safely, bearing in mind that narrow, safe angle? If our governments and health institutes keep telling us to trust the science, then what science exactly are they talking about? Why didn't they inform us about the nanobot technology in the swabs? Or about the possibility of being vaccinated by means of a swab? Why didn't they point out the dangers of being severely injured, or worse, due to an ill-performed swab? What science exactly are they referring to? Oh wait, let me guess. They must be talking about the science of the PCR test, right? After all, after your nose has been swabbed, its content is sent off to be tested by the famous PCR. The inventor of the PCR was biochemist and Nobel Prize winner Dr. Gary Mullis. He developed the PCR in 1983 to amplify DNA sequences. That's it! The PCR was never meant to be used for diagnostic purposes. In other words, you cannot use the PCR to diagnose a disease. You cannot use it to diagnose COVID-19. Every virologist knows this. Mullis had stepped forward on previous occasions when his invention had been abused. The PCR does not detect an existing infection. It only measures whether sequences of a virus are present in the body. These sequences could just as easily come from a viral infection that has already been overcome, or from contamination that doesn't even lead to infection at all.
And with PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. It's just a process that's used to make a whole lot of something out of something. It doesn't tell you that you're sick, and it doesn't tell you that the thing you ended up with really was going to hurt you or anything like that.
It gets worse. The outcome of the PCR fully depends on the number of cycles the test runs. The more cycles, the higher the chance you'll find whatever you want to find. After all, with each cycle, you amplify DNA sequences. In other words, if you run 40 cycles, you will find just about everything, from cancer to HIV to COVID-19. But that doesn't mean you actually have an active pathogen that makes you ill or dangerous to others. We all have cancer cells, but we don't all have cancer. Remember the insane amount of false positives? That's what happens when you abuse the PCR. And guess what? The authorities knew this all along. The WHO confirmed it on December 14, 2020. Did you even notice?
The only way you could tell if it's transmissible, if you can show that there really is live replication virus in you, and the tests don't measure that.
I think if somebody does come in with 37, 38, even 36, you got to say, it's just dead nucleotides, period.
Now please realize that there's nothing else to say, really. We're looking at the biggest global scam ever. SARS-CoV-2 was never proven to exist. You know what was proven? The uselessness of disinfecting your hands 1,000 times a day. The dangers of disinfecting your hands 1,000 times a day. The uselessness of wearing face masks. The dangers of wearing face masks. The uselessness of nose swabs. The dangers of nose swabs. The fraudulent use of the PCR, which, by the way, was the gold standard of the entire COVID scam. Do you realize what that means? If you dismiss the credibility of the PCR numbers, which has finally and rightfully occurred, you are left with nothing. No gold standard, no reliable statistics, nothing. Nothing but lies. Deliberate lies. And you know what was put on top of those lies? More lies. Even if you're asymptomatic, meaning you don't have any symptoms, you are still a danger to others. Complete and utter bollocks. And they knew it.
It still appears to be rare that an asymptomatic individual actually transmits onward.
Have you taken a test? Are you going to take a test?
No. Well, I'm not taking a test for some reason. I have no symptoms. But not everybody in the United States should take a test. I mean, I have no symptoms. There's no reason for me to take it.
In all the history of respiratory-borne viruses of any type, asymptomatic transmission has never been the driver of outbreaks. The driver of outbreaks is always a symptomatic person. Even if there's a rare asymptomatic person that might transmit, an epidemic is not driven by asymptomatic carriers.
You know what was put on top of those lies? Scandals. March 2020. Test kits in the UK had been contaminated with a COVID-19 virus. Excuse me? How on earth did that happen? Was this ever investigated? Was anybody held accountable? Of course not. Nobody seemed to care. You know what was put on top of that scandal? Yet another scandal. Bill Gates sold your DNA data to China. Not just yours, but everybody's. Every swab containing DNA was sold to China, as proven and revealed in 2021. Was Gates held accountable? Of course not. You know what was put on top of that scandal? Deceit. In order to scare the people into a frenzy, crisis actors and even dolls were used.
Und wir haben bestimmte Aufgaben bekommen. Das ist meine. Informieren Sie einen Mitarbeiter darüber, dass Sie das Gefühl haben, schlechter Luft zu bekommen. Das ist meine Bettnummer und ich kriege für das Ganze hier Geld.
Just when you think you've seen it all. You know what was put on top of the deceit? Yet another scandal called bribery and corruption. Ever heard of Belarus? You will now. The president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, refused to participate in the lockdown and other COVID insanities, after which the World Bank and the IMF offered him a bribe of $940 million in the form of COVID relief aid. In exchange, Lukashenko had to impose extreme lockdowns on his people, force them to wear face masks, impose very strict curfews, impose a police state, and crash the economy. Lukashenko refused. When all the other so-called leaders succumbed to temptation, Lukashenko stood ground and told the world what had just happened.
Как решается этот вопрос? При этом хочу заявить, что мы ни под кого плясать не будем. Там уже появляются требования. Вы, мол, в борьбе с коронавирусом в Беларуси делайте как в Италии. Слушайте, я не хочу, чтобы, не дай бог, повторилась ситуация в Беларуси, как в Италии. Уже Всемирный банк готов нас профинансировать в 10 раз больше, чем предлагал, за то, что мы эффективно боремся с этой болезнью. А МВФ продолжает требовать от нас: вы давайте изоляцию, давайте карантин, давайте комендантский час. Слушайте, что за глупость?
Were the World Bank and the IMF held accountable? Of course not. You know what was put on top of that scandal? Yet another scandal called statistics fraud. In May 2020, officials admitted tens of thousands of COVID tests had been double counted. In other words, 2 samples taken from the same patient, for instance to get an immediate second opinion, were recorded as 2 separate tests in the government's official figures. What a great way to pump up the volume. Then, also in 2020, the common flu had disappeared, just like that. The official numbers showed no more flu.
In the southern hemisphere, during their influenza season, actually, they saw a very limited flu transmission. It was unexpected and very surprising, but literally there was nearly no flu this year in the southern hemisphere.
The amount of people who now died of the flu, hundreds of thousands as always, were now counted as COVID casualties. Playing with numbers like that is called fraud. Also in 2020, in August, the CDC admitted that of all the so-called COVID deaths, only 6% had no other illnesses. 94% had died with an average of 2.5 comorbidities, meaning other underlying illnesses. In other words, according to the CDC, 94 out of 100 COVID deaths had actually died of a heart disease, of a respiratory illness, pneumonia, of organ failure, cancer, obesity, or a cognitive disease. Yet all of them had COVID-19 on their death certificate. Why? You'll soon find out. Here's another example of how statistics were used to mislead the people. The Dutch RIVM showed these graphs using different scales on the y-axis. Here it's 5,000 people, yet here it's only 25. But can you feel what it does to you to see these 2 graphs? Number 2 seems so much worse. And look at this horrific orange peak. Oh my god. But hey, the amount of people between these lines is only 5. So, on the 1st of September, 11 people died of COVID-19. Bearing in mind the false positives and the hidden comorbidities, remember the CDC 6%? The actual number should be something like not even 1 whole person. Well, now we understand why we're heading towards the next lockdown. Not. On top of our pyramid of all the lies, deceit, scandals, bribery and corruption, there were more lies about overloaded ICUs. Starting in the spring of 2020, we called many hospitals. We asked others to call hospitals in their area, in their country. They all came back with the same astonishing findings. The ICUs were not overloaded. It was like a normal seasonal flu in which the elderly with comorbidities tend to pass away. Now, before we end this episode and move along like a steam train, please do take a moment to fully grasp the significance of false positives. We mentioned it quite a few times, but do you really know what it means? It means hundreds of thousands of people were wrongly quarantined, looked up, and even hospitalized. It means countless businesses went bankrupt. The entire middle class was given a huge blow. The intentional abuse of the PCR tore families apart. It means an enormous emotional and psychological impact on humanity, most of all on children and the elderly. It means a devastating rise in suicides. We can only imagine Dr. Muller's turning over in his grave.
Guys like Fauci get up there and start talking, he doesn't know anything really about anything, and I'd say that to his face. Nothing. The man thinks you can take a blood sample and stick it in an electron microscope, and if it's got a virus in there, you'll know it. He doesn't understand electron microscopy, and he doesn't understand medicine, and he should not be in a position like he's in. Most of those guys up there on the top are just total administrative people, and they don't know anything about what's going on at the bottom. Those guys have got an agenda, which is not what we would like them to have, being that we pay for them to take care of our health in some way. They've got a personal kind of agenda. They make up their own rules as they go. They change them when they want to. Tony Fauci does not mind going on television in front of the people that pay his salary and lie directly into the camera.
Even today, the PCR test determines infection and death rates, which in turn determine the waves of infection, which in turn determines the lockdown levels, and which is now driving the push for mandatory vaccinations. As we make this episode, our heroes of the Corona Investigative Committee are taking governments to court for basing their destructive COVID policies solely and unjustly on the PCR. We have great faith in their work. Will there be justice? Oh yes. In the end, truth and light walk hand in hand, and they always prevail. It's just a matter of time and perseverance. But for now, it's time to expose some more ugly truths. After all, we may have given you our appalling COVID pyramid, but one element is still missing. Do you want to know what the capstone is trying to hide at all cost? Then follow me to part 22.